Boi. Come. Bashalan. In the peace. Atele. Putting crown on. Byler. Her husband. Boi Kailar. Come bride. This is a beautiful Hebrew wedding song, as if the angels in heaven are calling for the bride who has been waiting for 6,000 years to stand up bravely and put on the crown of glory for the coming King of Heaven.
Hello everyone, welcome to Enoch Talk Show. Today we continue the story of Jacob, part 9. Esau was so angry to come to kill Jacob, and the angels stopped this mighty tiger. Wrestling with that man ended with change of Jacob's name, and Jacob humbly himself in front Esau eliminated all his hatred. In the last few parts we talked about the two nations are in the belly of Rebekah. We also went into detail about the meaning of the names Jacob and Esau. Jacob deceived the birthright with red bean soup. Jacob cheated the blessing. These two cheats are double quotation marks, referring to the eyes of people on earth. We talked about Jacob's double marriage and sister's jealousy. Jacob's scheme and Laban's 10 times altered Jacob's wages. Rachel nearly died from the idol Laban chased after Jacob's family to kill them. Okay, let's talk about Esau was so angry to come to kill Jacob, and the angels stopped this mighty tiger. There is a place to mention in the previous book, which is Laban called it Jegar-sahadutha, but Jacob called it Galeed. Genesis 31 verse 47 NKJV. Laban's native language was Aramaic, but Jacob used Hebrew, so Laban couldn't understand the meaning of Jacob's trees, and he couldn't understand the meaning of the spots, dots, and lines. It also tells us that we must not compromise these with foreign languages. In the end, Hebrew is the only language used in the Doomsday Arkansas. Hebrew is the only holy language, the rest of languages in Gentile countries are filthy. In the front of Laban, Jacob still insisted on using holy language, the Hebrew. This was no contempt for Laban. Laban could use whatever he wanted, and we did not need to hinder him. Well, let's look at the scriptures next. So Jacob went on his way, and the angels of God met him. When Jacob saw them, he said, "This is God's camp." And he called the name of that place Mahanaim. Then Jacob sent messengers before him to Esau his brother in the land of Seir, the country of Edom. And he commanded them, saying, "Speak thus to my lord Esau, thus your servant Jacob says, I have dwelt with Laban and stayed there until now. I have oxen, donkeys, flocks, and male and female servants, and I have sent to tell my lord, that I may find favor in your sight." Then the messengers returned to Jacob, saying, "We came to your brother Esau, and he also is coming to meet you, and 400 men are with him." So Jacob was greatly afraid and distressed, and he divided the people that were with him, and the flocks and herds and camels, into 2 companies. And he said, "If Esau comes to the one company and attacks it, then the other company which is left will escape." Then Jacob said, "O God of my father Abraham and God of my father Isaac, the Lord who said to me, Return to your country and to your family, and I will deal well with you. I am not worthy of the least of all the mercies and of all the truth which you have shown your servant, for I crossed over this Jordan with my staff, and now I have become 2 companies. Deliver me, I pray, from the hand of my brother, from the hand of Esau, for I fear him, lest he come and attack me and the mother with the children. For you said, I will surely treat you well, and make your descendants as the sand of the sea, which cannot be numbered for multitude." Genesis 32 verses 1 to 12 NKJV. Let us explain that Jacob continued his journey, and on his way he encountered God's heavenly soldiers. At this time, Jacob did not know that Esau had come to destroy him with his army of 400 strong men. But God sent 3 groups of heavenly soldiers to warn Esau that he would not be allowed to attack Jacob, and not even said rough words to Jacob. Jacob saw one group of heaven army. The book of Jasher recorded that the heavenly soldiers surrounded the angry Esau, making his people dark and dizzy, and then told him that it was because of Jacob that the heavens let Esau live, so if you killed Jacob, you would also die. Acting like that 3 times in a row, Esau and his men became afraid and gave up the idea of killing Jacob. Jacob sent his servants to go to Esau to inform him that Jacob's family had come back and had prepared a present for Esau. As a result, Jacob's servants met Esau on the way, who was aggressive, and brought 400 strong men to come to kill Jacob. They quickly turned back and reported to Jacob. All of a sudden, Jacob was stunned. He never thought that Esau would come to kill him so quickly. How could Jacob know that was his father-in-law's plan, killing him with Esau's hand? Rebekah and Isaac also heard the news, and immediately sent all their hands to help Jacob, and told Jacob how to prepare big gifts for Esau, and be more humility, and finally resolve their former feud. But even combine Jacob's family with Esau's family, their servants were no more than 100 men. Compared with Esau, it was a fraction of part. In addition, Esau was famous for being sturdy, so if there was a fight, Jacob's family might be soon collapsed. We have to mention that in fact, the Jacob family was not afraid of wars. In a later section of the book of Jasher, it will be mentioned that dozens of Jacob's family defeated more than a dozen kings of Canaan and hundreds of thousands of troops, because God would also help, just like the 2 soldier groups of heaven armies would do. But now, Jacob's hands and feet were bound by God, because Esau was his elder brother, and even the heavenly soldiers would not kill Esau to make Jacob, Rebekah, and Isaac sad. Therefore, this was a war that was waiting to be killed, and this was what Jacob had been embarrassed and afraid of. He immediately divided his family into 2 teams, if one was attacked, and the other team could escape for their lives. He did not say that the 2 teams would aim to attack Esau, but escape for their own lives. This is also God's arrangement for the godly people, splitting the 12 tribes into 2, the 10 tribes in the north are now missing, and the tribes of Judah and Benjamin in the south are the main body of today's Jews. This is why Satan had been wanted to kill the Jews first, and after destroying the Jews, it will not stop fighting against other groups, because it does not know whether any human being survived will be an Israelite hidden by God. That's why, during Doomsday, after God will gather all the kings into the wilderness, all that's left will be slaughtered and bloodshed, and even Jerusalem will be razed many times. Everything we see today will be thrown into the Dead Sea until God's rock from which Adam was made is revealed again. Right now, the rock should be several stories high underground. Next, there was a way to face this, that was to pray to God, and Jacob calmed down and prayed. Let's look at the scripture description. So he lodged there that same night, and took what came to his hand as a present for Esau his brother, 200 female goats and 20 male goats, 200 ewes and 20 rams, 30 milk camels with their colts, 40 cows and 10 bulls, 20 female donkeys and 10 foals. Then he delivered them to the hand of his servants, every drove by itself, and said to his servants, "Pass over before me, and put some distance between successive droves." And he commanded the first one, saying, "When Esau my brother meets you and asks you, saying, 'To whom do you belong, and where are you going? Whose are these in front of you?' then you shall say, 'They are your servant Jacob's. It is a present sent to my lord Esau, and behold, he also is behind us.'" So he commanded the second, the third, and all who followed the droves, saying, "In this manner you shall speak to Esau when you find him, and also say, 'Behold, your servant Jacob is behind us.' For he said, 'I will appease him with the present that goes before me, and afterward I will see his face, perhaps he will accept me.' So the present went on over before him, but he himself lodged that night in the camp." Genesis 32 verses 13 to 21 NKJV. Explanation: the numbers here were from Rebekah, who knew how many gifts it took to impress Esau. But these numbers, in the eyes of Enoch today, can only know the meaning of the numbers that God instructed Rebekah. Everyone can see, almost all of them are 20, 200, a multiple of 20 is 40, and there is only 130 camels, and each was with a little one, so it was a little over 30, that is 31. Putting all these together, it implied 2031, the 84th anniversary of founding nation of Israel. Can you see amazing matching? Our website is set up to prepare for this day. The 3 batches of gifts passed, and Jacob explained it clearly, so Jacob stayed to pray. In fact, he already knew that the great spiritual test was coming. Remember, he has not crossed the river yet. We all know that Jacob's family, that is, our team, will eventually cross the Snake Belly River in the Great Tribulation, which will be the blood sea of Satan's family. So Jacob was not being cowardly here, as many Christian priests interpreted, but waiting to fight, and with whom? Let's listen to the scriptures. And he arose that night and took his 2 wives, his 2 female servants, and his 11 sons, and crossed over the ford of Jabbok. He took them, sent them over the brook, and sent over what he had. Then Jacob was left alone, and a man wrestled with him until the breaking of day. Now when he saw that he did not prevail against him, he touched the socket of his hip, and the socket of Jacob's hip was out of joint as he wrestled with him. And he said, Let me go, for the day breaks. But he said, I will not let you go unless you bless me. So he said to him, What is your name? He said, Jacob. And he said, Your name shall no longer be called Jacob, but Israel, for you have struggled with God and with men, and have prevailed. Then Jacob asked, saying, Tell me your name, I pray. And he said, Why is it that you ask about my name? And he blessed him there. So Jacob called the name of the place Peniel, for I have seen God face to face, and my life is preserved. Just as he crossed over Peniel, the sun rose on him, and he limped on his hip. Therefore to this day the children of Israel do not eat the muscle that shrank, which is on the hip socket, because he touched the socket of Jacob's hip and the muscle that shrank. Genesis 32 verses 22 to 32 NKJV. Who was that man? Christians and Israeli rabbis have completely different interpretations. Of course, there are differences among the rabbis also, and some rabbis have the same interpretation as Christians, that is, that man was the messenger of God, because the scriptures say that wrestling with angels is equivalent to wrestling with God. But even if it was an angel, there were good angels and evil angels Satan, so you have to choose whether that man was the evil angel of Satan's family. Christians are in complete denial because it changed the name of Jacob. And the rabbis of Israel said that man was Satan's evil angel. We lay out what we saw, why this man was from Satan. First of all, the good angels would not hurt Jacob and crippled his leg. In the previous book, we mentioned that God's ladder still had a broken leg. So Jacob's ladder then was broken. Later, when we talk about the story of Adam, we will mention that the last verse of the psalm is to celebrate the return of the broken leg, and the name of God the Father is also the Hebrew letter of He, the one of the broken leg. Therefore, the rabbi explained that only the broken leg will be considered clean. Those who keep their 2 good legs, such as Satan, are actually unclean. We will not argue here, but just tell everyone what the rabbi meant. Secondly, Satan is still the Son of God, an angel of God, and it has not sinned until today. Everything it had done was half a lie that has been needed for its work. When all the other evil angels in Satan's family will do bad things in the Great Tribulation, Satan will still not do evil things. In the end, God did not directly throw it into hell, but will lift it up just like lifted up a snake pole by Moses, and this time, angels will throw it into the abyss. Abyss is the place used to lock up 200 evil angels who had sex with human women. In the last generation, these 200 evil angels were released, reincarnated as human beings, and they will do the evil in the world for the last time. In the end of Doomsday, they will show full of evil and will be thrown into hell. Of course, the same fate will be true for Satan's son, the beast of the Satan family. Therefore, at the time of Jacob, Satan could come to challenge Jacob as an angel of God. Thirdly, Jacob was the entity who needed to be tested in the sea of blood. So only Satan was most suitable. Fourthly, Jacob knew that God wanted godliness, so the wrestling was not physical, but the way of godliness. Fifthly, Jacob knew that God was most pleased with blessings from enemies and opponents, so he held on to that man and forced that man to bless him. This is the entity of Balaam's 3 blessings to Israelites. The first was that man to bless Jacob himself, and the second will be the blessing from those who will fall into hell to those victorious kings who will enter the heaven when the evil angels of Satan's house are going to leave at the end of the Great Tribulation. The third time will be before the circumcision in the 8,000th year. Satan will have to say blessings to all Abraham's families. He will be really willingly conceded its defeat, so this time, which was the first time to bless, that Satan did not wish to bless Jacob, but it had tricks to lure Jacob to disaster, so it did. Sixthly, Satan knew that Jacob would eventually be called Israel, because this name means straight to God. But God won't change Jacob's name until 2 years later. Satan likes to make us to do this when God doesn't yet do this, and let us not do that when God wants us to do that. Look at the church today. Are they all sleeping on the stepping stone of Paul, waiting for Jesus to come down from the heaven they have called last 2,000 years as the doomsday every day, but when the real doomsday has come, they fell asleep? The Satan group does not sleep at all, they are reinforcing their traps. The people in these traps are sleeping, or pretend to be asleep, but the Satan groups will hit any person who want to awake everywhere around the world now. Satan praised Jacob and changed Jacob's name in advance with only one purpose, that is, to make Jacob arrogant and proud, so Jacob could finally deviate from Rebekah's instruction to humbly reconcile with Esau. Let us consider this. Jacob had just won the wrestling with man and God. Was he still afraid of an Esau? Therefore, even if Jacob was afraid before wrestling, and now he was so complimented, he would definitely have his proud tail raised to the sky. At this moment, he would never give away half of the cows, sheep and camels that he had worked so hard to get, and he would not kneel 7 times to Esau. These kinds of things will be unacceptable to anyone. Furthermore, Jacob did not do anything wrong. You see how terrible scheme the last resort was. In fact, what Jacob did was consistent with what Jesus taught, so what Jacob did was to show us in the ark of the doomsday that even if we do nothing wrong with the group as brother Esau, we should be as humble as Jacob did. Dissolve with him, because they will be so pitiful. This dissolving process is the true entity of our circumcision. We will talk about this in the story of Noah's Ark. Jesus came to prepare the ark of the doomsday, so every word he said was to tell us how to treat a brother like Esau in the Arkansas. That is to forgive 77 times, and if he slaps our left cheek, give the right face also. In fact, these are all necessary for the real circumcision, and he asked us carry our own cross into the ark, that is, take ourselves as a tree, enter the ark, and let Noah sweep those trees and vines to complete the circumcision of a tree. There are many details here. Please be patient, continue to listen to Enoch's chat, and you will come across to those details. Going back to Jacob, when all this was done, Jacob rushed to the front to face the challenge. The scriptures say, "Now Jacob lifted his eyes and looked, and there Esau was coming, and with him were 400 men. So he divided the children among Leah, Rachel, and the 2 maidservants. And he put the maidservants and their children in front, Leah and her children behind, and Rachel and Joseph last. Then he crossed over before them and bowed himself to the ground 7 times, until he came near to his brother. But Esau ran to meet him, and embraced him, and fell on his neck and kissed him, and they wept. And he lifted his eyes, and saw the women and children, and said, "Who are these with you?" So he said, "The children whom God has graciously given your servant." Then the maidservants came near, they and their children, and bowed down. And Leah also came near with her children, and they bowed down. Afterward Joseph and Rachel came near, and they bowed down. Then Esau said, "What do you mean by all this company which I met?" And he said, "These are to find favor in the sight of my lord." But Esau said, "I have enough, my brother, keep what you have for yourself." And Jacob said, "No, please, if I have now found favor in your sight, then receive my present from my hand, inasmuch as I have seen your face as though I had seen the face of God, and you were pleased with me. Please, take my blessing that is brought to you, because God has dealt graciously with me, and because I have enough." So he urged him, and he took it. Then Esau said, "Let us take our journey, let us go, and I will go before you." But Jacob said to him, "My Lord knows that the children are weak, and the flocks and herds which are nursing are with me. And if the men should drive them hard one day, all the flock will die. Please let my Lord go on ahead before his servant. I will lead on slowly at a pace which the livestock that go before me, and the children, are able to endure, until I come to my Lord in Seir." And Esau said, "Now let me leave with you some of the people who are with me." But he said, "What need is there? Let me find favor in the sight of my Lord." So Esau returned that day on his way to Seir. And Jacob journeyed to Succoth, built himself a house, and made booths for his livestock. Therefore the name of the place is called Succoth. Genesis 33 verses 1 to 17 NKJV. Jacob bowed down 7 times, plus a lot of gifts, and finally allowed Esau to dispel the hostility. This time the estrangement was eliminated, and Jacob's family and Esau's family were safe and sound for decades, until after Jacob's death. Then Satan finally told Esau the mystery of Abraham's cave. Esau stood up and ran to the entrance of the cave to stop Jacob's funeral, and Esau was finally killed at the entrance of the cave. These will be in the last part of Jacob's story, which we will discuss in detail later. Now we just have to remember that following Satan really doesn't do any good. In the last few years of Doomsday, Esau fought with Satan's beast, and finally killed the beast like Esau killed Nimrod, finally let Esau breath out his anger for cheating a few thousands of years. Back at Jacob, the Israeli rabbi said that Jacob's only daughter, Dinah, was also very beautiful. Jacob hid her in a closet because he was afraid that Esau would see her and marry her by force. In the book of Jasher, Abraham hid his wife Sarai in a box and carried them into the city of Egypt. As a result, the city guard opened the box and saw the most beautiful woman she was, and brought her into the palace. The book of Jasher mentions that the same is true for Dinah, who was hidden in a chest by Jacob. Their interpretation is that God gave Jacob a daughter Dinah just to be fair, because the family of Abraham married the daughters of the family of Adam, so a king in the family of Adam should also marry the daughters of the family of Israel. Esau, as the representative of Adam's house at that time, should have married Dinah. As a result, Jacob was selfish and unwilling, which would be resulted in Dinah was raped by Shechem. In the end, it was God's will to complete this task on King Joseph. Because Joseph, as the king of Adam's family, finally married the daughter from Dinah and Shechem, the daughter born after rape, became Joseph's wife. That's why God counted Dinah as a man among the 70 who went to Egypt from Jacob's family. Joseph has the double portion, and she did suffer a lot for the kingdom of God. While we were praying, we saw that Dinah was not what God had ordered Jacob to do, nor was Dinah a gift from Rebekah, because it was too cruel for Dinah to marry someone nearly 100 years older than her. But God tested Jacob 3 times, but it was a fact. God just wanted to see if Jacob could let what he loved most go. The first was Dinah. Ultimately, God would preserve Dinah as God preserved Isaac on the altar, if Jacob was willing to let Dinah go. The second time was Joseph. If Jacob hadn't been so sad, God wouldn't have taken decades off his life. The third time was Benjamin. In the end, Jacob successfully let go of his most beloved and let him and his brother go to Egypt. Since then, after Jacob passed the test, God had blessed Jacob forever. So, this time, God put that thought in Jacob's mind, to test him, but he was reluctant to give Dinah away. It was Jacob refused, in the end given the opportunity to the devil to let Shechem rape Dinah. For the kingdom of God. That's what the next portion of the story will talk about, the 10th part of the Jacob story. It is also the most controversial part of the Jacob story. Shechem raped his beloved, and was destroyed by his own evil. But this world said that Jacob's family was bad, and they brutally and unjustly extinguished Shechem city. Thank you for listening to the Enoch Talk Show. See you next time.